You've all heard of the famous hotel that inspired Stephen King's novel The Shining, but what many people don't know is that the house where the hotel's founder actually lived is located just down the road. And this quiet little retreat actually influenced the look and feel of the Stanley Hotel itself. The hotel might draw its crowds in with ghost stories and its haunted reputation, but the real story begins in this quiet little tucked away hidden gem. Most visitors don't even realize this house exists, which is exactly why I'm here to share it with you all. And I just happened to arrive the day after it was fully dressed for Christmas. So in this video, we're stepping inside the Stanley Home Museum, room by room, learning who the Stanleys were, how they lived here, and the original design details that helped shape what became one of Colorado's most iconic landmarks, and one of the most famous hotels in America. Hi, I'm Allie, and welcome back to Fab Little Dish, where we celebrate vintage homes, timeless design, and the stories that keep their history alive. This is the only channel where we take a deep dive into the design details that make these homes so unique and special. So make sure to hit subscribe and check out my other house tours on this channel, featuring historic homes across the country and then some. Make sure to also hit thumbs up if you love historic house tours and the stories that keep them alive. So come along with me to Estes Park, Colorado, and let's tour the Stanley Home Museum. Freeland Oscar Stanley, FO for short, and his twin brother, Francis, started their fortune long before the Stanley Hotel. They were brilliant inventors and entrepreneurs, first becoming wealthy through the Stanley Dry Plate Company, which revolutionized early photography. That success funded their next invention, the Stanley Steamer, a steamer-powered automobile that became famous across the country. Originally from Newton, Massachusetts, the Stanleys ventured out to Colorado for health reasons. FO had been diagnosed with tuberculosis and was told he only had months to live. Doctors urged him to go to Colorado for the dry mountain air. So he and his wife Flora traveled to Estes Park, and within a single summer, his health turned around. The recovery was so dramatic that they returned every single year. Just a few years later, FO began designing what would become the Stanley Hotel, a grand, light-filled mountain retreat meant to bring visitors in to enjoy the fresh air that saved his own life. But this house is where their private life played out, quieter, more intimate, and far more personal. The Stanley home was completed in 1904, and it reflects a simplified colonial revival style, the same architectural style that influenced parts of the Stanley Hotel. Symmetrical lines, classic proportions, warm natural light, all of those ideas initially appeared here in this home first. This was FO and Flora Stanley's private seasonal residence, the place where they returned to every summer while the hotel welcomed new guests. And even the exterior paint ties the home and the hotel together. When the Stanley Hotel was first built, it wasn't the bright white we see today. It was painted a warm mustard yellow with white trim, a very traditional color palette for grand East Coast estates at the time, a style the Stanleys brought to Estes Park with them. If you look closely at the home, you can see the beginnings of that palette here too. The museum actually plans to fully restore the exterior color of the home to reflect what it looked like when the Stanleys actually lived here. Today, the home is preserved as a Stanley Home Museum, and it offers one of the most intimate looks at the couple who helped shape the city of Estes Park and who even played a role in establishing what would become Rocky Mountain National Park. Stepping into the entry hall, you immediately see how the Stanleys used this home as a kind of prototype for the hotel just up the road. This dramatic split staircase in the Stanley Home's entry hall served as the concept sketch for the grand staircase in the Stanley Hotel. It's not identical, the hotel's is larger and more sweeping, but the idea of a symmetrical staircase splitting at a landing and rising to a light-filled upper hall, that idea all started right here. And you'll notice the newel posts change as you go up too, which gives the whole staircase a more custom, one-of-a-kind feel. You'll see a more formal version of this exact idea in the Stanley Hotel. This staircase is one of the clearest examples of how the Stanleys tested design ideas in this house before bringing them to the larger hotel. The wallpaper in the hallway immediately draws you in. It's not original, but it's a historically accurate reproduction of the kinds of pattern, scenic-inspired wallpapers that were so popular during the early 1900s. The hardwood floors are original, and I love knowing that the Stanleys themselves walked through this very space on these very same floorboards. And this little side table actually belonged to the Stanleys, one of several surviving pieces that stayed with the family and found its way back into the home. Efo and Flora wanted their seasonal home to feel like a New England summer resort. Bright, open, breezy, and optimistic. That exact phrasing actually appears in their own letters, and you truly feel it the moment you walk into this house. But I really feel that vibe when I walk into this space specifically. This room is another great example of design similarities between the home and the hotel. This sunlight wellness concept in the house directly shaped the hotel's design, especially the verandas, big windows, and bright corridors. And the green color on the walls was based on paint analysis done during restoration. When the preservation team peeled back the layers, this is the color they found from the Stanley's time. I love this shade. It makes the room feel elegant but cozy, especially with all of the Christmas decor layered in. The piano isn't original, but a period-appropriate piece similar to the one that Flora once had in here. She was an accomplished musician, and music was a huge part of her life. This was where she played, entertained friends, and filled the house with music. And that personal love for music is why the Stanley Hotel has such a notable music room today. This room really sets the tone, personal, elegant, and much more cozy than the vibe over at the hotel. Such a wonderful, quiet retreat. And now we're in the dining room, one of the most beautiful spaces in the entire house. The Stanleys were incredibly socially active here in Estes Park, and this is the room where they entertained summer guests, hosted dinners, and welcomed friends into their seasonal home. The first thing my eye was drawn to are these original built-ins. They're stunning. The dark wood frames the glassware beautifully, and I love how the wallpaper continues behind the shelves. It creates such a layered and beautiful lived-in look. This is actually the only room in the home where the woodwork isn't painted. And because of that, it immediately gives this refined yet authentic, cozy lived-in feel to the overall space. The wainscoting here sits higher than traditional wainscoting, and I love that detail. The wood trim acts almost like a picture rail and a visual divider at the same time. It breaks up the deep red wall color and the wallpaper pattern above, while also matching the wood trim along the baseboards and the crown molding. It's such a cohesive design decision, and the repetition of that warm wood makes the whole room feel grounded and elegant without being too busy. The china set displayed in the room is original to the Stanley family, donated to the museum along with many of the other glass pieces we see here in the built-ins. And just look at this Christmas tablescape, set perfectly for the season. You can almost imagine the Stanleys hosting a holiday dinner here, even though they only lived in the house during the warmer months. The museum does such a great job, though, of creating that atmosphere so beautifully. And this is the home's sleeping porch. It's bright, airy, and completely wrapped in windows. This small space really reminds you why the Stanleys came to Colorado in the first place, to help in FO's recovery from tuberculosis. Porches like this became incredibly popular in the early 1900s, and this was the whole concept of sunlight as medicine is something Stanley believed in deeply, and it shaped the look and feel of both the home and the hotel. The verandas, the bright corridors, all those wide openings that would make the hotel feel so open and optimistic, just like this home was designed to do. This room was F.O. Stanley's personal office, and the location was intentional. It sits right in the center of the house, with this sweeping view over the valley, so he could literally keep an eye on Estes Park as it grew and evolved. The lighting fixtures in here are original, and so much of what you see reflects the quieter, more personal side of F.O. Stanley. including the pieces that funded his biggest inventions. This is the guest bedroom. FO and Flora never had children of their own, but they often hosted guests here, and this is where they would have stayed. Many of the photographs displayed in this room captured children of friends, relatives, local families, travels from different adventures, some including the South, and people who spent time with the Stanleys during the summers. They are still currently restoring the upstairs. This is a newly renovated and opened museum, so everything is not perfect up here. We're seeing a lot of things in the restoration phase. And this framed print on the wall was an original to when the Stanleys lived here. A lot of the family and friends that visited the Stanleys claimed that this hung right here along with the clock we just saw. So the museum has been doing a great job of putting things where they originally were. This was F.O. Stanley's bedroom. The room has a more understated, masculine feel compared to the guest bedroom we just came from. The travel trunk and wardrobe in the closet hint at how often the Stanleys were on the move, especially when they were developing Estes Park and the Stanley Hotel. It's a quieter, more intimate room, but you definitely still get a sense of his presence here. This was Flora Stanley's bedroom, and it opens into that bright little sunroom that you see in the back. The sunroom wasn't part of the original 1904 construction. It was added later, around 1914. Just like the sleeping porch downstairs, these additions were all about bringing in more light and creating comfortable spaces to enjoy the mountain views. In July 1939, Flora suffered a stroke at the Stanley Hotel. She was brought back to her home here and died 10 days later in this bedroom. F.O. would die just about a year later in Massachusetts of heart failure at the age of 91, but many believe it was from a broken heart after losing his beloved Flora. While most people talk about her husband's success, Flora lived an extraordinary life, creative, engaged, and deeply dedicated to both her family and her community, at a time when women's names rarely appeared in the spotlight. Yet her influence is everywhere in this home, and in the legacy the Stanleys left behind. This was Minnie's bedroom. She was the Stanleys' longtime housekeeper and an essential part of running the household. She cooked, cleaned, mended clothing, and took care of all of the day-to-day tasks that kept this home running. This space reflects that quieter, behind-the-scenes rhythm of the house. And down the hallway that's connected to her bedroom is a bathroom, and this small little corner sink is also original. This kitchen has been lovingly restored to look almost exactly as it did when the Stanleys lived here, but the room itself is not original in its current form. It was one of the museum's major restoration projects after the roof repairs were done. This stove is not original to the Stanley family, but it's the correct model that they would have used, and it gives you an idea of what daily life looked like behind the scenes here. Minnie, their longtime housekeeper and cook, would have been preparing meals right here. Everything from simple breakfasts to the elaborate summer dinners that the Stanleys were known for hosting. Walking through this home, you really feel the Stanleys as people, not just the name behind the famous hotel. Each room reveals a little more about the Stanleys and the intention behind everything they created, right down to the design details that helped make up the Stanley Hotel's unmistakable style. If you've ever only visited the Stanley Hotel, I hope this inspires you to come visit the house too. This home is truly the heart and soul behind the landmark. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the Stanley Home Museum, all dressed up for the holidays, and that you learned a little more about the family behind one of the most iconic hotels in the country. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the house tours that I have coming your way, and make sure to hit thumbs up if you're loving all of these historic house tours I'm bringing your way. I have multiple ones planned each week as my little holiday gift to you all. And let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions on where I should head to next. I'm always looking for inspiration and ideas. Until the next one, my friends, keep enjoying the beauty of vintage home. Au revoir.